We're going on a journey this morning, a journey of the life of the alcoholic addict. Just walk with me for a few minutes. Walk with me. We're going to take you into the mind, the heart, the soul of the alcoholic addict. And yeah, love you to join me. So the journey begins. The journey begins very young for most alcoholics and addicts. And in this journey, in this description, this may not cover all addicts and alcoholics, certainly not specifically, but it should cover many of us generally. And so here we are. We're going to walk together, and we're going to start quite young. I think just for, let's start at 13. Let's start at 13. At 13, most of us, many of us, have realized that there's something drastically wrong. We've realized that something's missing. There's confusion. Somehow, for most of us, we don't fit in. There's something's amiss for sure. Many of us came from families that were full of confusion and full of chaos, and so we were in the middle of that confusion and chaos, and it seemed that there was something must be wrong with us because everything was about us. We were young, we were children. There is no way of perceiving it any other way. It all starts with us, and for many of us that goes with us our whole lives, that if there's something wrong, it must be us. If something's working, well, it must be us. And generally this feeling at 13 that something was drastically wrong with life, and the alcoholic and the addict in a young age were kind of looking at ourselves and wondering, who am I? Why am I here? And why do I not fit in? Why do I not seem good enough? Why do I not seem to be the right person at the right time? So that's the journey. And maybe that's the journey for many teens. But what happens with the alcoholic and the addict is it's painful. Somehow we know that something's missing, and we're looking for it. And when finally we discover our first drink or our first drug, we realize, wow, this is it. I found it. Because what came for most of us, alcoholics and addicts, is relief. Um, yes, relief. We're like, oh my God. So we had been prior to that in a state of confusion, kind of constant pain, feeling of not good enough, not fitting in, tons of fear, a life of fear through the even preteen, and when we were 5 and 6, and for many of us there was trauma, and so when we discovered drink or drug, it was like, wow, wow, this is it. We had no idea that it was dangerous, even though people said, I remember my grandmother saying, "Whoa, careful, that's very dangerous." But we didn't care. We'd found the solution. For many of us, the solution was that drink. And so I think that in this journey that we're on, I want to reflect on the family too. So family of the young alcoholic addict are wondering what's going on with our son or daughter. What's happening? Why are they acting like this? And they're confused. Of course, if many of us were brought up in alcoholic addict families, even though they were well-meaning, they were also experiencing similar fears and covering their vulnerability with whatever they were using, whether it was pills or prescriptions or food or work or whatever they were using to cover up their vulnerability and their fear. And so here we were with families wondering, what's going on? Why is my son or daughter acting out? Why do they not fit in? Why, And in my own case, I remember, being 13 and 14 and having discovered the solution already, which was for me was drugs and alcohol. And I had looked other places. Alcoholics and addicts, the journey, we're often told, even as children, that we're quite intelligent, that we're exceptional. But it doesn't matter. We don't believe it. Or we don't buy it. We know there's something wrong. There's something missing. And we're not sure what that thing that is missing, but we found drugs and alcohol, and it was like, yes, okay, this is it. And I remember, some of you will remember, and if you're a family of an alcoholic or an addict, you'll know my family tried a lot of different things, and to try to, settle me down. They didn't have a lot of tools, but they tried different things. And I remember when they sent me I went to Cub Scouts and Scouts, and I didn't fit there. I really didn't. My whole thing, when I would be anywhere, I would either try to disappear, to be invisible if I could, or to really shine. If I found something that got me some notice, I would want to shine. I would want to be seen. And so there I was, 11, 12, 13, not either wanting to not be visible or wanting to really shine. But I drank and used alcoholically from day one. And many of us do. And so there's confusion. There's like, wow, and how do we affect the system? In the school system, many of us, if we're troubled youth, that's what they called us, troubled youth. We didn't fit in, did we? No, and we had another priority, and that was getting high. And so what did we do? We started to steal. We figured the system out, and we realized that if we wanted to get high and somebody was, between us and getting high, like our dealer, and back in my day, it was probably, we were kids in the 60s and 70s, it was different, but than I think it is today. It was certainly not as hardcore. So, very young age, I was able to recognize that I could be in that business, and if I was in that business, I could kind of get what I needed, which was to get higher, to get loaded, and so by 15, I'd already worked it out. I wasn't that interested in school. I'm here. This is not necessarily a picture of all of us, but many of us, our priorities had shifted. The idea wasn't, I'm going to get an education. The idea was, how do I get high, now? How do I get high this weekend? How do I get, drunk? And at the same time, though, there was a vague idea that this life is going on around me, and that I should participate in some way, and I would try to participate, but school was not a priority, and many of us come with other things. Like, I didn't just have this alcoholism, which was an extreme feeling of not fitting in, or extreme feeling of fear and loneliness. I also had, for me, and this is the same, I think, for many, many people, I would have been extremely ADD. We didn't call it that then, so I didn't fit into the school system. And so, like many alcoholics and addicts of my time, I didn't stay. I started my looking outside quite young. I hitchhiked all over the country. By the time I was 16, I'd been, to Ontario, and I traveled, and hustled around. And time I was 18, I had already moved across the country, but my priorities as an alcoholic and addict were different. How did that affect relationships? Of course, the family, the family of every alcoholic and addict, and I was one of 5 kids who were all qualifiers, so my poor mother was, I just can't even imagine the stress and the strain that my poor mother went through every time the cops came to the door, or every time that's not always the example of the alcoholic, but we often get in trouble with the law. We often get in trouble with the law. And so my mother, I don't know how she got through it, but that's the thing. This is the journey, And so as I grew up, and really care from a perspective of how can I serve my mother, how can I serve my father, I cared about what could they give me. And because that's the alcoholic and the addict. We are generally very selfish. We're from a very young age, we never kind of grew up. I mean, children are like that. Children are looking around and they're the center of the universe. But as we get into our teens and 20s, and we're still that way, grossly that way, full of fear, full of misunderstanding and confusion, full of resentment and anger. And the only time we felt a sense of ease and calm is when we could drink or use. So life was chaotic, and always bouncing from one drama to the next, and one crisis to the next. The life of the alcoholic and addict. Does this ring a bell? So family did what family could do at the time without any tools or understanding. Family has to say, hey, see you later. What are you doing here? And that's just the way it is. It's for lots of times with family of alcoholics and addicts, I mean, they're out of resources. They have no resources. What can they possibly do to be in the life of the addict and the alcoholic, and that's would have been in my case as well. So that's the story, and what about relationships? Many tender moments, of course, but ultimately having a love partnership relationship with an addict or an alcoholic is dangerous business, because the alcoholic and the addict cannot really be there in a giving, loving way. He can say, she can say, I will, I want to, I desperately would love to be there, but what they're really looking for is, how can I get love? How can I get love? Because in a way, it seems to be what's been missing all along. And not that mom or dad didn't love, not that wives haven't loved, or that brothers and sisters haven't loved. It was our ability to receive and to discern and to recognize that was somehow askew. And so it didn't matter how much they really loved us or cared for us, our wives, right? Our partners, our husbands, our children, our mums and dads. We couldn't let it in. Something was amiss in the system. And so here we were in really a self-imposed crisis of disassociation, of delusion, of thinking of ourselves as unworthy. And even the thought of unworthiness is a self-centered thought. And it's always about me when I'm a practicing alcoholic and addict. So that's by no means the story, the whole story, but what does it, the effects on family? I, like many other young men, conned some lady into loving me because the alcoholic and the addict can spin a tale. And there we were, I had spun a tale. And I cannot imagine. My first wife, what could she possibly have seen in me? But, we were all confused. What could she have seen in me? My gosh. My heart goes out to her, because I was damaged goods, mental illness. And so that's the story often of the addict and the alcoholic. So then what happened, and this happens to many of us, we get into our 20s and children start to come along. And for most of us, we're absolutely incapable of maintaining a disciplined lifestyle. And I had an example just recently of a young man in his 30s with 3 kids that just cannot put days together, in a work environment, and because we become damaged as we go deeper into using drugs and alcohol for relief, for medication, as we go deeper into relieving the pain through drugs and alcohol, we actually damage our brain. We damage, and so we become, it's a downward spiral. It doesn't get better. It always gets worse, and so we're we're in trouble, big trouble. And sometimes miracles happen. I believe they do. I so believe that the prayers of mums and dads and family and sponsors pray. Once the alcoholic or the addict has started to realize there's a problem, and he's starting to, okay, how do I find my way out of this? I've got to quit. I've got to stop somehow. I've got to get a hold of something, because I'm going down the drain. And often, he finds his way to, and I did, to a 12-step program, but I believe the prayers and the honesty and the love that happens in that environment can lift us up, can kind of give us something to hold on to, and until we begin to have a deeper understanding, and we begin to have an experience, and the experience is an experience of freedom. We're like, oh my gosh, I don't have to live that way, and for me that was what happened. I recognized that other people who spoke the same language, who had the same feelings that I did, and I remember such feelings of abandonment. I remember being high or not, or hungover, and walking in the morning. Sometimes, if you've ever done it, you're an alcoholic and addict, you know what it's like. You're walking home at 8:30 or 9 o'clock in the morning from whatever thing you were on, kind of pretending you're like the rest of the world who seems to be going to work, or you're walking by a house and you can see people in there and they look so happy, and we're not. The alcoholic and the addict it's the disease of loneliness. It really is. It's the disease of loneliness. And so when we discover something, like a 12-step program, we discover a 12-step program, we recognize there's a solution. Oh my God, there is a solution. And we begin to rebuild. Yeah, and we begin to put it together. And in my case, it took something really big. I had to wake up and realize that, holy shit, was I ever screwed? Like beyond anything that I could possibly fix on my own. And that happened. So this is the life of the alcoholic. In my case, a happy ending, But I also want to say that it took years. It's taken years in recovery to kind of untangle the mess, to realize that how deep the fear went, how deep the confusion went, how deep the self-loathing went, and to untangle it and become really, happy, joyous, and free. But it can happen, and back to the family. The family in the beginning there's always denial. Denial comes with the disease, but it's not just the alcoholic and the addict that has denial. The family has denial too. I remember my dad, when I sobered up, and he said, "Oh, you weren't that bad." I stole his car. He was always bailing me out of jail. Jeez, I'm not that bad. So that's okay. I really got that denial was part of it. He couldn't see what was happening for me, and many times family can't. They're just confused. They're hoping that we'll lift ourselves out of our lethargy. We'll somehow, some way figure this thing out, and when we do, they're like, wow, that's great, but really the buck stops with us, and our relationship. Then we develop a relationship with a higher power. I also just wanted to point out in the story, in the journey of the alcoholic, when I think of what does the alcoholic cost the system, thousands. Just this one alcoholic, by the time I sobered up, I was young. I was 25, but I've been in and out of lots of jail cells. I remember thinking that, my thing, I was going to write a book and get in shape when I got big time. I think it didn't happen. It didn't happen. But that was lots of like one night things. I cost the system a lot. And I cost employers because I didn't show up. I would get jobs. They would be, enthusiastic about me, because I would present pretty well in the beginning, but I couldn't make it work. I couldn't hold it together. So I cost the system. There's no question. And I glamorized that. We all do. The alcoholic and the addict glamorizes his rebel, calls, we like to go under the rebel banner, where I'm a rebel. No, I was a loser. But only because I had a disease. Alcoholism and addiction is a mental illness, and the results were not winning results. I wasn't a rebel. I glamorized the story. I was just scared, and I was putting on a front, a huge persona of rebellion and tough guy. So the alcoholic and the addict, eventually we have to, if we're going to recover, we have to become vulnerable. We have to become humble. We have to become grateful when we do. Many do. So, to the system, you recognize, the millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars that are lost because of this disease, alcoholism and addiction and mental illness. The medical system, what it costs is just unbelievable, what it costs the medical system. And how, alcoholism and addiction plays a part in so many illnesses, whether it's a heart disease or cancer or, there's so many, we play a part in it. I was reading an article the other day of the percentages. So this is the story, and it's not a happy story. It really isn't. So recovery is the happy story. And many of us, no matter how much shit we got drugged through or drug ourselves through, when we recover, we look back and say, wow, am I ever grateful that I was an alcoholic, that I'm an alcoholic and an addict? Am I ever grateful, that I discovered a way out? And so our job, I believe, is to not only find our own way out through, I don't know of another way. I really don't know the success ratios for, some of the other, psychology or therapy. I can't say that those things won't work, but I do know that the 12 steps work. And I do know that, there's one of the things that we can do to assist the whole process is to focus on, informing the family and letting the family understand the disease. I was at a funeral the other day, and this father of a young son who committed suicide, and by the way, committing suicide is a big symptom of mental illness. And this man happened to be an addict and an alcoholic as well, but, and he committed suicide, and his dad was like, oh, heartbroken, just heartbroken. Like, oh my God, heartbroken. And, but without a program, so I believe as we recover, it is, the onus is on us to help our families into the program, not to push them, but to help them to offer. It's not just our problem. It's a community problem. It's everybody's problem. So, when, me as a 13-year-old, discovering my solution and spending, literally only 12 years, the next 12 years in insanity of, living to get high or get drunk. If I suppose if my family had at the time understood the disease, that there could have been some, something could have changed. And I think that's the way for many, many addicts and alcoholics. And because often what happens with family is they push us away. They don't know what to do. We're dangerous to be close to. So that's my message over and over again, to share the knowledge, share that, we have found a way out. Okay? And just one second. What I've been doing here every morning is reading from this little book, and I'm going to read again. Yes, I am. And I'm going to read again. I've been reading this since this is the 24-hour day book. It's a book that was written in it was published in 1954, I think, and and it was the early days of the 12-step program, and just a nice little thing. One of the things that happens for us in recovery now is that we have, the alcoholic and the addict absolutely need to have daily practices. It's a period. Because the mind is still waiting there. The crazy old mind that got us in all the trouble is still waiting there for a weak moment, so we can say, hey, there you are. And we call it cunning, baffling, and powerful. So even in recovery, we need to continually do daily practices to remind us that the way out isn't through some mystical God that's, some image of a God. It's a higher power that's personal to us. We sometimes call it God because it's hard to know. We need to have a name for it, and language is difficult. And it took me a long time in recovery to recognize that there wasn't a separate God. God was, Bill says in We Agnostics, that God either is or he isn't. Either he's everything or he's nothing. So if God is everything, he's not over there. He's here. He's deep down inside of me. And that's where we access it. Ultimately, in the alcoholics or in recovery in the 12-step world, we access that power within ourselves, which is a beautiful thing, isn't it? So that's this message. Whenever I speak of God, think of a God that's personal to you. And we're going to have a little short meditation at the end here. And it's basically my supporting of everybody here to just drop inside. It doesn't matter how long you've been sober. It doesn't matter what religious beliefs you have. It doesn't matter any of those things. What matters is making this connection on a daily basis, and having it as a working part of the mind, having it as a God consciousness, right? So that's why I lead a little bit of a meditation, like just a 3-minute usually. So let's read this first. March the 1st, thought for the day. When I find myself thinking about taking a drink, I say to myself, don't reach out and take that problem back. You've given it to God, and there's nothing you can do about it. So I forget about the drink. One of the most important parts of the 12-step program is to give our drink problem to God honestly and fully, and never to reach out and take the problem back to ourselves. If we let God have it and keep it for good, and then cooperate with Him, we stay sober. So, it says in the paragraphs just before step 3, it says that we have a new employer, being all powerful. He provides all our needs. If we stay close to Him, perform His work well. And some of us have to be pretty badly mangled to realize that we cannot manage our lives, that we need to be on a daily basis, turning it over. Hey, James, welcome. I'll talk to you in a bit, buddy. So, meditation for the day. Constant effort is necessary if I'm to grow spiritually and develop my spiritual life. So that's what I was just saying. Daily practices, really important. This is a journey. This is not a destination. This is a journey. I must keep spiritual rules persistently, perseveringly, lovingly, patiently, and hopefully. By keeping them, every mountain of difficulty shall be laid low. The rough places of poverty of spirit shall be made smooth, and all who know me shall know that God is the Lord of all my ways. Little extreme for me, who has, it's like, oh, okay. I see it a little more subtly than that, but, I recognize that I am that. And when, in my meditation, in my quiet moments, when I feel the presence, it's like, oh my God, no pun intended, but yeah, it's amazing. To get close to the Spirit of God is to find life and healing and strength. Yes. Prayer for the day. I pray that God's Spirit may be everything to my soul. I pray that God's Spirit may grow within me. Whoa, March the 1st, baby. We started this May the 1st, so 2 more months and we'll have done a whole year of reading this book. And then I think I may find something else to share on a daily basis. So we're just going to sit for a couple of minutes, all right? Now, I don't even like to call it meditation because, some of you guys go, meditation, I don't know how to meditate. I'm not a meditator. So let's just call it sitting, okay? Let's call it sitting and recognize that we're just going to drop in. See, we spend so much of our life outside with our focus, using our senses outside. And so we're going to close off our major sense, which is our eyes, and drop in. Just let our eyes relax in our head. Just let the eyes just kind of relax. They can do that. Take a breath. With our breath, we come into our body. Just drop in. Just for a minute, focus on our body. Focus, for a second on your feet that are on the floor. Focus on your calves, and your knees, and your thighs. Just be in your legs for a minute. Focus on your hips, your abdomen, your back, your lower back, your spine. Just bring your attention all the way up into your chest. Feel your heart beating. Bring your attention into your shoulders and your shoulder blades. Just let your shoulders drop. Just feel your head sitting on top of your neck. Just imagine that your head is kind of tied to a string on the very top of it, and it's just hanging there from this string on top of your neck. Let your jaw relax. Feel your breath in your nose. Let your hands relax. Let your wrists relax. Just dropping deeper into nothingness. Just imagine that we're going to start with a number and we're just going to count from 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're now in a deep state of relaxation. We're in space of freedom. If thought comes, just breathe into it. Be gentle with it. Thoughts will just pass through. In this quiet state, we know that we're not our thoughts. We're not our body. We're the observer who observes the thoughts quietly as if we're on a hilltop watching. Observes the body. Feel the stillness, the quietness. This quiet space is available many times a day if you like. Just practice coming here. Practice spending a little bit of time here in this quiet space. It's here that we start to realize that we're not our story. We're not a victim. We're not bad. We're not wrong. We are love. We are joy. We are free to serve, to love, to accept, to be one with. The ultimate story of the alcoholic and the addict is finding our way to freedom and recognizing that everything was needed to bring us here. And so it is. Okay. Love you guys. No need to come out of your inner state. Just stay there. Love you lots. We have our little sharing group tonight at 7 if you'd like to join us. I'll post the Zoom link. Everybody's welcome. 7 on Monday evenings. Thank you guys. Love you so much. Bye.